Episode 15 is sponsored by Profound Movement. Do you and your coworkers need to hit the communication reset button? It's time to stop allowing personality differences to get in the way of cultivating a happy, productive work environment. Profound Movement offers a practical approach to corporate wellness programming by facilitating on-site workshops for your teams to build a harmonious, collaborative, and productive environment. Profound Movement focuses on the physical aspects of stress reduction as well as team building for a healthier, happier workplace. Visit profoundmovement.com to request a free consultation today to unite your teams, allowing them to perform with a confident, focused mindset. Hello everyone, this is Daniela, the founder and the host for the Still Standing podcast, which is a part of the Still Standing Together series that includes this podcast, support groups and workshops for women, an online community of positivity, and apparel. And if you listened to episode 1, you heard that I started this a few months ago, and the podcast was designed to be a way for us to follow up with our attendees from our support groups and workshops. And this was also a way to reach out to more people to help them while they're going through any struggles or challenges in their lives. You know, it's hard for us to see the light during the struggle, and what really had helped me was talking to people, talking to therapists, talking to a mental health professional, whether it was traditional or non-traditional, meeting up with other women in my position who are maybe entrepreneurs, who are artists. For others, maybe it's mothers, maybe it's people who are transitioning in some way or another. Maybe they're moving or relocating to another city to live in. Maybe they just need a change, or, maybe it's the uncontrollable. Something has happened that we just can't prepare for. I wanted to create this community to support everybody so that they had resources and tools and go-tos and honest talk, honest conversation, honest support, and openness to make them feel as though they're not alone. It's important that whatever I do through these podcasts or through any of these resources through Still Standing, that there's a sense of togetherness and there's a sense of reliability, but there's also a sense of self-discovery. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in on episode 15. You'll be meeting Megan Tahan. Megan is a communication and personality styles specialist. She's the founder of Profound Movement and a yoga and fitness instructor in the Philadelphia area. Her special interest in leadership development led her through a career in human resources, which revealed the need for people to find balance in their lives. Megan's approach offers tools to de-stress and become more effective as individuals strive to achieve their goals. Megan's goal is to help people find better ways to communicate, focusing on problem solving and managing conflict. She is a certified DISC facilitator and helps people analyze their communication tendencies to then tailor their response to be harmonious with different personality types. Megan also incorporates mindful movement into corporate training, which focuses on movement, breathwork, and meditation applied to the corporate setting. She understands that fitness is never one size fits all and takes that same approach using situational leadership. You'll hear from her about continuing to move forward past debilitating stress in the workplace. And she helps through mindful responses, but also through her DISC training, which is such a unique and specialized way of helping people to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are and where they can go from there in a setting with others. So this means not just workplace, but also relationships, any type of interaction. She shares with us her journey of turning inward, which she really wants to help people to feel better at work so they can feel better at home. And what she explains is that when we focus on what we do for ourselves, this emanates out into those that we do interact with. So if you are feeling any type of unhappiness at work, feeling like there's conflict, there's tension, you don't feel heard, there are misunderstandings, there are things you can do to work for yourself and on yourself and turn inward towards to figure out your strengths and acknowledge those stressors so that you can communicate this to those in your work environment, those in your home, and hopefully find a synergy, which Megan talks a lot about working to improve this and about shifting this dynamic so that you can be productive and happy and move forward together, working together with one another. One of my favorite things that Megan mentions about when we learn about our personalities and when others are open to learning about themselves, but also about their team, their partners' personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, their purpose, their joy, their mission, what motivates them when we get to know one another on these things. She mentions about that, being open, but then learning to appreciate the differences. And when you stop and think about everybody in your life, whether or not you have a miscommunication happening or tension, but especially if you do have things that are conflicting, think about where this person is coming from. Think about appreciating what you offer and then appreciating what they offer. And it might not be the same thing that you do, but it might help you to see a new perspective in moving forward together. You'll be hearing from Megan in our interview together shortly, but if you are in the Philadelphia area, she did want to share a message about an event on how you can connect with her and learn about what she does and how you can apply this to not only your life, but in particular, any stresses or stressors that you are feeling right now during this very sensitive time of the holidays, where there's lots of energy, lots of emotions happening, lots of pressures. So take a listen, and then following will be an amazing interview that you will not want to miss out on. So, Meg, do you have anything coming up that our listeners can take part in?
Yes, I do. I'm so excited about the event I have coming up on Wednesday, December 11th. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. at the We Work at 1900 Market Street, which is where we work out of. And it's called Serenity and Strength because we'll be going through a mindful meditation and some movement, but then we'll also get into character strengths and how to identify those strengths to be able to reduce your stress, especially in the middle of the holidays when it can be very chaotic. For some people, this is a sad time of year. But my goal is to help everyone reconnect with that joy through the holidays. That's why I put it smack dab in the middle, even though I know that's not the most convenient time for everyone. But yeah, December 11th, 6 to 8 p.m. I would love to see everyone there. We'll go through, workshop style, and there will be food, networking, a lot of great people. Already the people who've signed up are awesome. So I'm really excited for it. And I would love to have all our listeners join.
Hi, Meg. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, you know how much I love talking with you, and I loved how much you shared with us at the support group and workshop in September. Wow, that feels like it was a decade ago.
I know. I can't believe we're already close to the end of the year.
It's crazy, but it's been a great year, and so I'm really happy that you're a part of the group leaders, and I'm so excited for what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to kind of tell our listeners just a little bit about that, but then I definitely want you to share about yourself and how you got into doing what you do. So
Sure.
that's great. So we've kind of talked about like giving our listeners, and this is something that I feel like we haven't shared too much yet on, and it's very specialized that you do. So I really want to talk about that spotlight on managing mental health and stress and dealing with differing personalities, and then the communication portion of that, because we do so much work inside our minds and our thoughts and, for ourselves, but then I feel like there's that second layer of having to communicate and make sure that we are setting boundaries or we are clearly communicating our needs and things like that.
Definitely. There's a big focus on the personal work and what we do for ourselves, and that's so important. And then I like to look at what's happening when we go and take that to other people and interact with other people. It's been something that's helped me a lot in my not just personal life, but also in my work life, and just being able to connect with lots of different people. It's been really valuable.
I was just going to say, it seems like such a valuable tool for everybody to recognize and learn and know, but I don't know how much we do this. So thank goodness for you and your work. So can you just tell our listeners, wherever you want to start, but I want to give them an idea of, who you are, what you do, and how you got to this point of helping people.
Sure. So I've been a yoga and fitness instructor for almost 9 years now, and I did that all throughout university, and I always had that as a side job with my other corporate roles once I graduated. And I always found myself using those techniques in whatever environment I was in. And I also came into a human resources role where I had the opportunity to actually make change within the culture, actually help other employees to do conflict resolution when there was an issue, maybe between employees or between employee and manager or vice versa. So I always found myself wanting to help people feel better at work, and also that way they can actually feel better at home, because we all know that when you have a frustrating interaction at work, it can just set you off for the rest of the day. And I
Absolutely.
found that so much, throughout really every environment. And we all go through it in our work life, and even in within our families. So I found myself using a lot of these mindfulness tools as I was dealing with conflict resolution. And I thought, I really need to bring these two worlds together of HR, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, to be able to again help people just feel better at work. Because it's a lot of environments, it feels like we're just spinning our wheels, and more is more, demanding, produce, put out. And just that stress and that demand can be very taxing on not just our mental health, but also the way we interact with other people. Where you're shutting down or you're flying off the handle, just all out of stress, because you can't stop for a moment to actually think, breathe, feel better, and then mindfully respond. So that's why I started Profound Movement, because I knew that I had to bring these two worlds together and bring this to other companies and other organizations.
I love that. And I love the name of your company. I'm not sure if I've ever told you that, but Profound Movement is just such a great combination of what you do. And then also the idea of like the insight in the profound word, and then the movement, not just because you do have that background and that's what brought you to creating this creating this company, but it's also the movement in the culture of the workplace and also at home.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
and I feel like which I want to ask you a little bit later, to share some of those mindfulness tools, but I think it's so great because the movement also talks about that forward movement, which we talk a lot about in Still Standing Together. And at the group is like making sure to continue, so you don't get debilitated by your mental health, debilitated by stress, that we continue to move forward. So I love that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, the idea behind that, like you said, was the profound movement in your mind, body, and career. So whatever that may be, or in your passion too. So just moving forward and looking at things in a different perspective than maybe you do when you're stressed and frustrated and all the pressures of um, even just being someone who's better, stronger, faster. All those pressures can weigh us down. So what would it look like to really live our lives with purpose, with joy, and from that comes great productivity. So that speaks to directly the bottom line of what your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish.
I love that because I think it is such a fine line of that, as you mentioned earlier, like go, 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 go. But it's to be mindful, take that second, take those few minutes, take that, take this whole process, internalize it to continue moving towards, as you said, your purposes, your goals, as opposed to just being in this whirlwind of like life passing you by.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so now you have some really cool, I don't know what I would call it, like eh, tools on your belt, I guess I would say. But tell me about like DISC and how you learned about the personalities and what you include in your work because it's really cool and I don't know the best way to explain it. So I'm going to leave that up to you.
Sure. I actually went through a DISC training when I was HR manager, and I helped kind of bring this expert in, and she was an expert on DISC, and she's one of my mentors now, Maria Grandi. She is awesome. But she is a professional, and she came in and did the DISC training. And I said, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. All of these conflicts that are going on. So I went through a training similar to the one that she went through, and amongst many other trainings that I did to really make sure I had all these tools to share with people. And I love DISC because I mean there are a million personality styles, test assessments, models out there. The reason I love DISC so much is because it's simple, and once you start to build rapport with someone, you can actually assess and understand what their style is based on maybe a couple of conversations with them, right? You learn what's important to them, you learn what motivates them, you learn how they work, how they tick. So that it being so simple was what really drew me to it, because you're not going to meet someone and say, hey, can you take this personality styles test so I can know how to speak to you and know what you care about. You're not going to do that when there's some styles, they're like 24 styles and 12 styles, and you can't possibly, I mean, you could learn all of those, but most people are not going to take the time to learn those. So with DISC, it's 4 styles. It's pretty straightforward once you learn it. It does take a little bit to learn it, get used to it, and assess everyone who's in your life and what their style is. Not that you're going to be psychoanalyzing everyone, but again, just understanding what do they like, why do they work the way they work, what makes them tick, what motivates them, and what makes them feel good, so that you can almost tailor the way you speak to them so that they actually understand what you're saying. It takes pressure off of you so that you can feel good the way you're speaking with them, and it doesn't come into this big misunderstanding, miscommunication. It's usually because of some funny little personality style difference that they just don't communicate exactly the way you do, and then that comes conflict. And what do we say at the end? Oh, it was just a misunderstanding. It usually is.
And it's so interesting that you were figuring this all out while you were also in your HR position.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have a particular example of where your disc training really came into play to help either yourself with someone else or two people who were having that conflict work it out and find a solution?
Sure. Yeah, there were multiple instances, but there were there were a few that were just classic. You have introvert versus extrovert personality clashes, and they were both incredible people. And at first, it's like you don't realize that when people have something that's different than you, that's almost like you're staffing your weakness, right? The two could either be the best work duo or their worst enemies, which is what was kind of happening based on stressors that were coming into play, stuff from home. It could be things in the office, too much workload, right there. So there are a lot of stressors that come into play that we can't necessarily just chalk up to, oh, well, they just don't like people, or oh, well, they overshare and that's too much for me. You can't just chalk it up to something like that. It's people just have these innate tendencies and they work differently, but if you can understand them and start to value those, you can actually use those to your advantage, because between the two of you, you have everything, right? You have the details, you have the driver, the one who's like, all right, let's just do. We're keeping it moving. We'll fix it along the way. The person who's people oriented, who gets the team excited, and then the person who maybe is a little more introspective, and it will also take a look at everything, observe how are people feeling, do we have all the details we need to make this decision. So when you look at all of those types of personality style traits, you can actually value, okay, we need all of those in an organization. And and I have to make another note. One thing that I would always notice when I was interviewing myself for positions, and then when I was interviewing other people for a position that we would have in our HR office, I would notice, okay, I'd have to really be intentional about, I can't just focus on what I relate to, which is very easy to do, right? When you ask a question, because we as social beings, we want to relate to other people. But if I do that in a job interview and I'm just looking for what is already in me, I'm not staffing my weaknesses. I'm having another person who thinks like me, talks like me, answers like me. And then I don't have the person who maybe is a little more even paced, who will actually catch those fast paced mistakes that I make, or will actually say, hey, did you think about this, and that? And I actually am very much a detailed oriented person at work, but it's not my natural style. So
Interesting.
yeah, so there's that. I mean, that brings us to another thing. Your natural and adapted styles, and we use energy generally when we're adapting because it's not natural for us. But yeah, I would see that a lot, and even when I was interviewing, I would find myself wanting to just relate to the person who was interviewing me, so that they feel like they can connect with me and work with me. And while that's important, right, you want synergy within a group, it's also so important to staff something that's different, even though that's not in our innate tendencies.
I really am so fascinated by it, Meg, because you mentioned you mentioned a lot of great things, but there are a few key words in there that stuck out, which is like the synergy of it, the
Mhm.
natural, the adaptive energy. And it's kind of ironic if I say this, but I think we can all relate to what you're saying, being in an interview or having to talk with someone. I mean, maybe it's even a first date, and you're trying
Right.
to build that
Yes.
relationship and you're like,
Of
oh,
course.
or you're with a group of friends and it's like, oh, wow, we're really different. How have we been friends this whole time? But when you look at it from the perspective that you're saying, that synergy is important, and having all the pieces to create a whole is what it sounds like to me,
Hmm.
that we can support each other on, which makes sense because it's all about us working together on things, and supporting one another. So in my mind, that's kind of how I think of it. Like, okay, it's okay if we're not all the same because we all bring different values and different things to the table to work together and support one another.
Absolutely. And that's something that is being focused on a little bit more in today's world, in today's HR culture, is diversity, right? You have teams now committed to that, which is great, diversity and inclusion. But also just having different perspectives and different experiences. Those all contribute to the ideas that build up an organization, right? And I always use the example of, so the I in DISC is the interactive, and those people are, they're super creative, super just always ideas flowing. They'll put a million ideas out there, and they might sound crazy to someone who is thinking about the execution, like, do you even know what that entails to put something like that in place? And but so for all those ideas, even if they sound wild or out there, maybe one out of those 20 ideas is your money idea that's really going to take your company off the ground. But if we've already decided, oh, that Sally, she's always having crazy ideas, like, we can't, I can't even entertain these. I can't take her. But if you would actually listen and say, oh, wait, that's something we could use, being actually open to that style of thought, and that the way they process is almost, thinking out loud of, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? And instead of judging, go, oh, there Sally is again, just acting crazy and telling us all of her wild, wacky ideas that she has no idea what that would even take to put out there. We actually go, oh, wait, that's a good one. We might be able to use that. So that's, it's actually appreciating those differences and those ideas that, if you're a details oriented person and always looking at process, the conscientious person, the C in DISC, right, you're not necessarily going to be the one putting out all those ideas, but you could take that, transform it into something amazing if you're actually open to listening. So it's talking about, working together, and actually appreciating the differences to make something that is overall just amazing, beautiful idea come to life.
I'm nodding my head so much to this because I can remember a few years back, and I try to remember this in everything that I do, is that I did something similar. I don't think it was disc, but I'm so intrigued by that. But I remember it saying, you know, I assume a leadership role, but my execution is not something that would be as strong as if someone else were to do it. So it's basically like
Mm,
I may be that ideas person, and then, but that took me a long time to realize in my business, in my different work environments, that I like to be able to do it all. But it's almost
mhm,
like I had to step aside, and things really did get done with more of an ease when
mhm.
I would kind of remember that, like, okay, it's okay if I can't execute the whole thing. Let me see if this person can. And then it turns out wonderful. And it's like, I didn't have to do it all. So, and
Right.
I mention that because I just want to, say to our listeners, because I think some of us might relate to that, where it's like you try to do it all, and it's okay if other people need to jump in on different roles, but also just so that they know, like, this is what you come in and help people recognize in
Mhm.
the workplace, within their relationships, is that it's just bringing in awareness to it, I guess I would say.
It is. A lot of it, I always say, once you know it, you can't unknow it, and then you actually have to put it into practice. So, like any mindfulness practice, communication, right? Mindful communication is a mindfulness practice. So, it does take some practice actually speaking a certain way to different types of people, because we think, well, my style is this and that's just how I am, right? How many times do we hear, well, that's just how I am, if they don't like it, and it's very easy to assume that role. And while yes, the core of your being, you're not going to change that, and you really shouldn't have to. But if you can create as a team an overall awareness of everyone's different unique personality styles, then you can adapt. But it's not always, when I do this training in teams, it means it's not always on the person, on the one person. It's on, the onus is now on the whole team to be able to work together to create that synergy that we were talking about. Because when one person learns it other person doesn't, they're constantly adapting to the other person's style. Well, that takes a lot of energy. So that's why I love helping teams do this together, because when we go through this stuff, and a lot of it's so much fun. I mean, we do goofy activities, we have discussions, and when we go through a lot of these examples, I have a lot of people go, oh, shoot, I definitely do that. I definitely say, you always do this, right? Or I'm always on the attack, or I always shut down when I feel like someone who's more dominant is is giving me a task or telling me how to do something, when really they're just task focused. They're not even really realizing how they're saying what they're saying. So in that sort of example, you have someone saying, okay, I'm not going to judge them for trying to give me a task and being super task focused. I understand their role. It may be that that's their role. They have to move quick, they have to make decisions. Everyone's asking them for things, and they have to just, kind of make decisions down the line. And then vice versa, when they're if that person who's more dominant, the D in this, is giving an instruction, if they know that the person they're speaking to is more people oriented, so is listening to the tone of voice and how they're saying it, or would like just a greeting, hey, you're doing a great job, can you do this because we have this and that. And even just having that little awareness that they might need just a little more affirmation, or they need that recognition to make them feel good. Once they're loyal to you, they'll be your best friend. They'll do whatever you need. So when that dominant person can actually look and say, all right, I'm going to be a little softer than maybe I would be with, speaking with someone who's, and I'm thinking about like top executives here in this example. So someone who's, if you're speaking to someone who works, at a level beneath you, that you have to really take that leadership role with a lot of responsibility and respect that person, and understand that even though they're not in your role to be that quick decision maker, that they're still an important part of the puzzle, important piece of the puzzle that actually helps you learn your clients and listen to your clients, and they might be the reason why that they stop in a little bit more, or are actually loyal to your company. So to take the time and be a little bit softer with them, and just say, hey, you're doing a great job, if you know that that's something that means a lot to them.
I love that explanation. And so I want to take a scenario because, we're focusing on mental health, the stress, what are different stressors, things like that. So also taking that communication piece, if there was a scenario where an employee is feeling as if when they go home, you know, their mental health is being affected, any type of health, their physical health, or anything, they're feeling depleted, they're feeling really stressed out, like, they can't work at their best, they're unhappy. What do you suggest for that employee who now has listened to this podcast so far,
Sure.
knows about DISC, knows how somebody like yourself can help a team? What do you suggest to them to communicate how they're feeling and make a suggestion on, how can we be better?
One of the first things I say is to learn how to reframe how you have any sort of request with someone who either you're working with, or someone who you love in your life, who you are looking for something different, or just want to shift the way you're communicating. um, I like to think about it in terms of personal accountability. So there are some things that we need to start doing more, and this also has aligns with goal setting, of what do you need to start doing more. Like someone who has a tendency to become more passive when they're stressed, they may say, I need to start voicing what my needs are. Because a lot of times, if you're the S in a supportive role, um, sometimes it seems they don't want to be a burden to other people, right? They want harmony, they want peace, they're the uniter of the team. So when they're in conflict, sometimes it's tough for them to voice that because they just want everything to be all copacetic, right? Everything to be great. So for them to voice it is tough, and it is intentional goal setting of, okay, I need to be able to voice when I have something that frustrates me. And there's a way to do that. It's a model is when this, I feel this. I would prefer this because this. It's direct, it's to the point, but it also explains everything you need and why. And it actually, that model speaks to all personality styles, right? You have kind of each personality style covered in what's important to them and how they need to understand what you need, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it sounds so life changing in every area of life or any relationship in life. So I
Mhm.
absolutely love that you are sharing that with the listeners.
Yeah, and even especially with the supportive person, um, a lot of times the supportive person can clash or feel almost swallowed up by the more fast-paced people because they're more even paced, right? We don't say slow pace, it's even paced, right? Because you need those people who think before they act or think before they speak. So I'm just going to put that out there. Some of my fast-paced friends will say, oh, they're slow paced. No, they're even paced. You need those people who think and before they speak and before they act. But a lot of the supportive people, they'll feel swallowed up by the fast-paced people. But a lot of times they are the ones who are actually most open to feedback. So that fear, because what they know is they might not like criticism, or they are very careful to not do things to upset the harmony, right? So when they're speaking with someone else or have a problem with someone else, while their fear is, well, I don't want to rock the boat, a lot of times those people are the most open to feedback, and they'll go, oh yeah, I can fix that, I'll do it. Especially the dominant person who really doesn't take things personally very often because they're so task focused, which of course that can be troublesome when they're under stress and not people focused, but it can be a good thing when not under stress, that they'll take it and go, oh yeah, we can fix that, let's do it. And they're open to those ideas, even though it seems like that dominant personality, oh my gosh, they're going to come down so hard on me. Well, that's actually not a characteristic of a dominant person who is fast paced and task focused. They're actually much more open to that feedback, and we'll just do it. They'll just do it and fix it, which is great. It might not be perfect the first time, but they'll try, they'll attempt it, and they'll fix it along the way.
It's also interesting. Okay, so if you can just name a couple of stressors that people might be feeling who are listening to this, to kind of, turn that light bulb on of like, okay, I think maybe we need to start to bring an awareness to the team, or, what are those stressors that are common? And if,
Sure.
yeah, so does that make sense? So like somebody's
Yeah.
listening that they feel like, oh wait, that's me, or oh wait, this happens. They know like, okay, it's time to take action.
Right. So a lot of stressors, first of all, we all take our personal stuff into work with us. It's very easy to say, leave your personal stuff at home. In the way we are in our demeanor, we all take it in with us. So that's one thing I've been very encouraging of organizations to not try and just force all that stuff down. Like, yes, you still have to be professional and mindful of where you are, but that stuff is what makes us all who we are, right? So someone who's going through a rough time, helping that, maybe instead of going, oh, leave that at home, that's not here, say, oh, how can we help you overcome this? Like, let's go through this. Do you need 10 minutes to be outside? You extending that to them might mean the absolute world to them. They go, wow, they really care about me. All right, I'm going to take my 10 minutes. I'm going to come back and do a great job, right? And it, again, doesn't always happen that way. There are always exceptions, but you really want to allow people to be who they are, and that's what we talk about, in tendencies and in disc in general. But other stressors would be deadlines, right? You have these deadlines, work overload. So one thing, as a human resources manager, I always wanted to hear things before they blew up, right? I'd rather hear something that was, something that was kind of boiling and bubbling up inside. I'd rather hear that when it's not already too late and they're either on their way out the door, or something blew up with a coworker because they just have too much work and no one knows what I do, no one understands what I do because no one does what I do, right? We all assume we can do other people's jobs, by the way, when we spend a lot of time with people. Even if we don't do them, they're like, oh yeah, that job's so hard. I keep thinking Sally as my example. I'm like, oh, does Sally do that much? We always think we could do other people's jobs, until it's time to put foot to the pavement. But recognizing that you have to speak up on some of that stuff. And if I found, there were times that, oh, if that's too much load on, maybe one department, if you're overloaded and I go, why are all these mistakes being made? And you actually give me feedback. Well, because I'm doing this, that, and the other. Sally's doing this, that, and the other. Joe's doing this, that, and the other. Then I understand, okay, then I can't expect it all to be getting done perfectly. Yes, I expect you to perform at a certain level. And if that's not met, maybe I need to make my expectations a little clearer, or maybe we have to have a conversation. But I'd rather fix it. And there have been times that we're like, all right, we either have to bring someone else in, or we have to delegate this differently, that we just have to get creative in how we do this. So yeah, work overload's a big one, personal issues, deadlines, and then a lot of it is some of that personal work of just like not feeling good enough, not feeling in control of the situation. That's a big one, because when someone's delegating something to you and you don't really understand why, or you're like, this is stupid, this doesn't make sense, right? Once you look at the big picture, you can go, okay, I'm contributing to this kind of greater mission or greater good. And all our goals that we're working towards can align, right? Goal setting in terms of understanding what the company's goals are, and then also what your personal goals within the company are, so that you can feel like you're working towards a purpose instead of just spinning your wheels for someone else.
It's definitely helpful because it sounds like you help everybody feel heard, which ties into the whole idea of communications. Now, what about if you mentioned about you never wanted it to get to that point of where it's going to blow up or someone's going to leave, but talking to people might be tough. So what are some effective communication strategies to use when somebody has to have an uncomfortable conversation, or a conversation that has been causing them stress and anxiety, or any type of mental stress, bringing up any type of issues that they've had with their mental health? What are some ways that they can communicate this?
Sure. Yeah, it's a big, it's a loaded one.
You can pick your favorite one.
Yeah, my favorite ones are to, you have to disarm people sometimes, right? Because when we have those personality differences, our brain is actually identifying that's different, right? Or that's foreign to me. I don't know what that is. And it's our brain's job to do that, and we can even label those things that are different as potential threats. So part of it is disarming ourselves and recognizing, okay, just because someone works differently than I do doesn't mean they're a threat and doesn't mean I have to judge them. But it is opening up the first mindful communication with them, because sometimes we're just, you know, out of stress, we either react or we retreat. It's like and it mimics actually our fight or flight response in the brain, right? Or that's something that is new to us or different, or that's not how we work. Then we go, okay, well, I either need, that stresses me out, so I either need to fight with you or completely shut down. And our what do we do in our communication actually mimics that fight or flight response. So the first step, it really is awareness. And I wish it was more simple than that. I wish there was like a fix all, like, hey, do this and all of your work communications will be perfect. It's definitely not like that. It's a practice of being aware, and then also being aware, like you said, what stressors get to you the quickest, right? So I would know something was coming sometimes, and I would work myself up already. And that, first of all, that's not useful and it's not productive. And a lot of times it doesn't even turn out as bad as you think it does. Sometimes it does, and in that case, you deal with it. And that's why you're in the whatever role you're in. And that's why you have that responsibility, because you can handle it. And because someone trusted you with that responsibility, and with your creative, your own intuitive intelligence, you can fix that, right? And you can deal with it and get through it. And it'll make you not only a stronger asset to your team, but just a better person overall. So it really is just recognizing, practicing, having these more mindful communications and approaching someone without judgment, with more of an understanding, more of respect, so that you can actually value the people you work with and recognize that their differences are exactly what you need because it's what you don't have. There is a bit of humility in that too. But when someone's approaching maybe upper level management, it's just the way you approach, you want to present it like you're trying to work with them, right? You want to do a good job, you want the company to move forward, but hey, maybe these things you haven't recognized because you're not, me as HR, I'm not present in every office, I'm not present in every department. So when I would hear something, so whether it's good or bad, someone's doing a great job in here, I want to hear about that so I can say, hey, good job, I'm so happy you contributed to that. But I don't know unless it's communicated to me, period. And that's how it is with everyone. And you know what? Same went on my end as HR. If I expect someone to do it, I better be clear with what I need and what I expect. And sometimes that's a good thing to ask for is, hey, what are my expectations here? Because sometimes we don't make it clear what we expect from other people. And, that gets into creating boundaries, right? No, I'm not going to stay until 8 p.m. at night just because,
Right.
So there's certain things there where creating boundaries, but it's all about collaboration, saying, I want to work with you, I want this to be a powerful synergy dynamic here. I want to do better in the company, I want to grow within the company. There were another example is, some people wanted to grow within the company and the organization, and we didn't really have a plan for them. So I would go, oh my goodness, we have to kind of create this succession plan, and we need to be doing this for everyone, because how are we going to motivate people if they don't know that they can grow with us as they're helping us grow, right? It has to be this, it has to be reciprocated on both ends, the communication, the clear expectations, the asks, or the, what you need and how you feel in a role, and just what's going on, so that we can celebrate the successes and then fix the areas that need improvement. Along with awareness and just awareness kind of being the overarching idea we're talking about here, a practical tool that people can use also is assessing their strengths and weaknesses. And this is something we also do in the DISC personality model for each style. But if you can do that on your own, that's something very simple to increase your awareness, to be able to use your strengths more, and then actually strengthen the weaker areas or the areas of improvement. So, and I know it sounds like, oh yeah, strengths and weaknesses. Okay, that's like an interview question or something that, everyone knows about. But always when I ask, an overall question to some of my teams, I'll say, okay, who's done their strengths and weaknesses in the last 6 months? And almost no hands go up ever. If there are, it's maybe one or two. And then I say, okay, what about in the last year? And even then, maybe one or two hands go up. But this is something that is very a useful tool to be able to actually say, I am good at this. I'm aware of it. I'm going to use it. And then, okay, this is an area that I need to work better at. How can I actually take steps to improve that? And that really propels you into action, right? I'm all about giving actionable tools and steps that people can take to move closer to the awareness of their personality style, their strengths, and what they can improve on. So that's another tool I'd say for everyone. And, once we also get more into the personality styles and people understand DISC a little bit better, that's where we can really dive deeper and actually list even just the top. For example, one of the exercises we'll do is we'll list the top 3 people who you interact with most. And then some of those people you get along great with, and some people you might have a little more conflict with. So then we list, okay, what action steps can you take to shift that communication? And it puts the responsibility on you, but then also allows you to open up those doors for other people to be able to communicate with you in just a much more harmonious way and in a more harmonious environment.
Everything you just said was so valuable. And there were two things that you said, Meg, that I really stood out to me, and I think might stand out a lot to our listeners, is that you mentioned those uncomfortable conversations, and that sometimes it's either A, not as, I don't want to use the word serious, but you mentioned like it might not be that climactic as it might seem, or the opposite, if it does get to that point, you're capable of handling it and you'll be able to handle it. And I think that's really important because there's that fear factor that plays in. And so there's like a 50-50 chance there, which is really good. Like you're capable of handling it, or it's not going to be as bad as you might have made it to be in your head.
Right.
So those were two really great things that just stood out, especially for me, because I know I do that a lot when I have to confront someone because I don't want to disappoint him for many other reasons. But working on being able to stand up for myself and just create boundaries and, let people know what I need and want in life, I have found that that fear factor plays in where I build up this whole thing and the catastrophic, experience. But then at the same time, I do know that like whatever happens, I know I'll be able to handle. So I wanted to point that out because I think that's so important. With all the other amazing things you were saying, that really stuck out to me. So now to be aware, we need to be mindful. And you have some mindfulness tools. You especially had a really great breathing exercise you took us all through at the support group and workshop. So if you can touch on some mindfulness tools, and then I'd love for you to give us an example of that breathing exercise for our listeners, if possible.
Yeah, I would love to lead us through that. I actually start a lot of our sessions with the some sort of mindful meditation or breathing exercise because it really prepares us physically to be able to learn and go through the rest of the awareness tools that we talk about when we learn personality styles. So I love using breath work, meditation as mindfulness tools because it helps reduce the physiological effects of stress first. And that's part of that disarmament, right? Because when we're under stress, it's that fight or flight, and we feel like our body's almost telling us you only have two ways to respond, which is lash out or retreat. But when we can actually breathe, that puts us into our rest and digest, which is, the other side of it, parasympathetic nervous system. So when we can disarm the fight or flight, actually feel better, then again, our communication mimics what's happening in the body. And we go, oh, wow, I have so many other choices to respond with. I can actually think with a clear mind, I can respond, and I can feel good in this interaction. So yeah, I use breath work, meditation, mindfulness, all mindfulness tools to be able to help people do that. So yeah, should we get right into it?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So I like to start this. If you're sitting down, if you can, wherever you're listening from, if you can come to almost the edge of your seat, just so your spine is nice and straight, let the feet be planted on the floor, and just settle in for a moment. Just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. You can go ahead and take another breath in. And just settling in, noticing that you're supported by the chair or whatever you're sitting on or laying on. Again, feeling that feeling of support, feet to the floor, nice and grounded. And then as you're breathing here, think about something that you want to attract in your life, whether it's joy, peace, abundance, love, something that's positive that you would just love to have in your life. And then once you have that word, also connect with something that maybe is in you right now that you want to let go of. Maybe it's frustration, anger, resentment, judgment. And think about that you just want to release that right here, right now. And remembering that this is a process, right? But we're going to use a breathing exercise to physically connect with the idea and the feeling of breathing in that good thing and exhaling that thing that we do not need and does not help us. So I'll count you into a count of 4. And I will say, if at any point controlling your breath feels uncomfortable, or you have any feelings of anxiety, any heart issues, that it just doesn't feel good to control the breath for 4 counts in, 4 counts out, please just allow yourself to breathe normally and just say this in your mind. So as you take an inhale, I, breathe in, your word. Exhale, I, breathe out, your word. Inhale, I, breathe in. Exhale, I, breathe out. Inhale, I, breathe in. Exhale, I, breathe out. Inhale, I, breathe in. Exhale, I, breathe out. Give yourself a few breaths here on your own and try and connect with what does it feel like to actually breathe that positivity in? What does it feel like to let that go? That negativity, just leave. And connecting with that right here, right now, even if just for a moment, knowing that it's possible. Allow yourself a few more breaths here. To finish up your last deep breath with that 4 count in, and then let it go. Right, you can let the breath return back to its normal pace. And then as you're ready, gently blink the eyes open. Good.
Wow. You
Mhm.
are incredible. I just have to tell you that and make sure our listeners know how much of a light you are, which I love to tell you and remind you of all the time when I see you. But you really are a light because it really shines through of how much you want to bring people to peace and happiness and
Mhm.
how genuine you are through all the things that you do. And just in that and hearing your voice is so soothing and I feel at such ease. So I just wanted to thank you so much
Thank you so
for you.
much. That means a lot to me. I mean, I have a lot of support from people in my life, and even just we do have quite a great business community here in Philadelphia, or at least the people who I've connected with. And so I just especially think it's great that you have created this group and still standing, just to have these resources for everyone, because I know it's been really important. And this breathing exercise and all these tools have been things that have helped me. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm still working on all of it. And I think it's really nice that you have this support for everyone. And I thank you as well for letting me share what I have. And I've taken so much value from everyone who you've had at the groups and on the podcast. So thank you as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It really makes my heart happy to hear that. So, before we go, in still standing podcast tradition and support group and workshops, if you could leave our listeners with anything else you want them to know or think about, but also something that can leave them still standing, an affirmation, a thought, a practice, anything of the sorts.
If I can get people to understand that they have the power and the ability to shift the way they move in the world and in their workplace and at home, it's just that you have control to be able to do that. And even if it feels like you don't right now, which is, there are times we feel like we absolutely don't, you have the control to shift how you look at things. And there's so much in each and every person that the world needs your uniqueness and your differences. And even if that's not celebrated right now, you have the power to communicate truly who you are. And not only will other people find it valuable, but if you can value that, that's just the most important thing.